On today's Locked On Texan podcast, Cody and I talk life after Tank Dell, and we revisit Will Anderson's statement game.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers to this Thursday's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If this is your first time listening or watching the Locked On Texans podcast, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube at Locked On Texans. And all of our returning listeners, thank you for lending your ear for another episode as Cody and I continue to talk Texans here on this Tuesday. We open up today's show. We're going to be talking about the unsung heroes versus the Denver Broncos. I think that's a good conversation. When you look at a team fighting and clawing for every win that they could possibly get, a lot of these one-score games Houston has been bound to in the last several weeks. There's always going to be a hero that maybe or may not get the credit that they deserve. So we're going to look at that. The rookie, number 3 overall pick, Will Anderson statement game. We'll talk about that and how can the Houston Texans move forward without Tank Dell. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you guys know me, I'm your Texas football analyst, John. I'm Sports Guy Hickman. Joining me, as always, is Sports Illustrated's own credential media member, Cody Davis. Now, Cody, opening up, looking at how the Houston Texans can move forward without Tank Dell. Kind of looking at the Biggie Smalls like that, the death type of deal, speedy recoveries to Tank Dell, who will be out for the rest of the year, even if the Houston Texans make a playoff run, which I think all of us are thinking that they will and expecting them to. Tank Dell will not be coming back. And so just what is your feel right now for the Houston Texans offense and how can they move forward without Tank Dell?
Well, first and foremost, Coach DeMeco Ryans did confirm the season-ending injury to Tank Dell Monday afternoon. And actually Monday morning, Tank Dell did have successful surgery on his broken leg. It's a heartbreaking situation, John, because like I mentioned on yesterday's show, the resiliency that we have seen out of this team ever since training camp, starting with the loss of Scott Quisenberry. There have been so many players who have stepped up with the so-called next man up mentality to the point over the last couple of weeks. I'm not even going to lie to you. I've actually got numb reporting on another loss to this team. The last one we just finished talking about in Titus Howard. You talk about the loss of Titus Howard. What did we come on this show and say? Well, thankfully, at right tackle, his original position, you have George Fant, who is still holding it down and has put together a really good season. He's going to play himself into a contract. But then when you take a look at the position that Titus Howard was playing, left guard, even though with him going down, you had an opportunity to finally see and get not one but 2 good games out of Juice Scruggs. Speaking of Juice Scruggs, we'll dive more into his production over the last 2 games on tomorrow's show. But John, this was a little bit different. And yes, I understand it comes at one of, if not the most surprising position group of this season in terms of the wide receiving core. I mean, you just had Nico Collins putting up a $191, a $192. But at the same time, Tank Dell was so important to this Houston Texans offense. Before moving forward, I just want you guys to listen to what Coach DeMeco Ryans had to say about Tank Dell, his injury, and his potential recovery.
Yeah, unfortunate for Tank. He'll be out for the rest of the season. He had a successful surgery this morning, so on to a speedy recovery. Our prayers are with Tank. Our thoughts are with him. It's been such an inspiration for our team. Just incredible young man. Happy for the season that he has as a rookie and the impact that he has as a person, as a player for our organization. But expect to get him back for before next off-season program. Yeah, for me, you see, we get in the end zone and there's just a big pile up there, and He's just going out to check on Tank there. You see he was obviously in some pain there. You hate to see any player down in that manner. Just unfortunate, right, to see him go out that way. He's been tough for us, man. Tough blocking in the run game. Just everybody sees the explosives that he's had in the passing game. But just unselfish player that did a ton for our offensive production. Right, so just still unfortunate, hate to lose him, and just really, sad to see him. He's having such a great year, right? One of the best years you've seen from a rookie at the receiver position. So it's just unfortunate to lose him.
My favorite thing Coach DeMeco Ryans said was they are expecting to have Tank Dell back during the early part of next off season's workout program, which means we will probably see Tank Dell back out on the field. Let's say early March. I believe the first voluntary off-season workout program starts, I want to say 2 weeks before the draft, if I'm not mistaken. So it's good news to know that we're definitely going to have Tank Dell back for the 2024 season. However, with 5 games left, Coach DeMeco Ryans was asked following Sunday's game, how can you replace Tank Dell? And he simply said, there's no way you could replace Tank Dell. Yeah. That's how valuable he has been to this offense. However, John, that's why I want to frame this question. How do you move forward without Tank Dell? And for me, I know you're going to get into John Mechie because you literally just talked about this situation last week. But to me, I think you really have to rely on the services of Xavier Hutchinson. This is a young man who was, to our surprise, a healthy scratch in yesterday's game. We know throughout the
whole he was the odd man out, by the way. I think he was just the odd man out of the equation.
Yeah, he was.
This is the Texans' first time having Mechie, Collins, Robert Woods, Noah Brown, and Tank at one time. So I think he was just the odd man out.
Yeah, he was, but I still hate to see it. I mean, you could have used him on special teams, but hey, healthy scratch. And not only that, we saw throughout the season that they like to use Tank Dell in the rushing attack in terms of those jet sweeps. You definitely got to make sure you use that with Xavier Hutchinson. We actually seen them have some success in terms of using Xavier Hutchinson in that exact same way. However, when you look at Tank Dell, you're looking at an average of about 70 to 75 yards per game. You got to use Xavier Hutchinson in the passing game.
Yeah. So the Texans are ranked 9th in the NFL in total offense. Another 373 yards gained. 275 is from the passing attack led by C.J. Stroud. For Tank Dell, he contributes to that 275, 65 yards. And before Sunday's exit, he accounted for 92 yards and a TD each game dating back to the Buccaneers game, where Houston really started to see the opportunity to capture a playoff berth. Tank Dell was a driving factor in this team's ability to score points, to move the ball. And I might be in the minority when I say this. I don't think Houston can or will replace that from one player not named Nico Collins. And as we saw, Tank Dell goes down and Nico Collins goes out there and almost catches for 200 yards. He also had a TD on the day. Tank opened up the field for other skilled players. There's not another one player that can do that for this Texans team. However, it's not about replacing one player with another one player, but more so a team effort. And Cody, this may shock a lot of you guys. I know the hot name is Mechie, and I think he should have more opportunities, but the one guy I feel needs to be a part of the game plan each week moving forward is the guy who took advantage of his opportunity this past game. And that is Brevin Jordan. I still think, so I think with Stroud, the yak opportunities are there for Brevin Jordan, as we saw. And even when Dalton Schultz returns, this will be a great opportunity to have those two tight end formations or lining him up in the slot, which is something the offense can do to create more matchup problems with linebackers. And he's lined up in the slot, I think, close to 30 times this year. For his career overall, I think it's about 80 times he's lined up in the snaps. I don't have the amount of targets that he's had, but he's lined up in the slot position for Houston a few times this year. But ultimately, as much as people are looking at John Mechie and Hutchinson and what they can bring, the real answer to this, you guys want to know what the real answer is? Noah Brown. as much as we want to see more of a role for the young dogs, and they are dogs, and I'll get to them. The reality is the difference in snaps played makes a big difference. And Noah Brown has shown to be an impact player for this offense, which did feature Tank Dell, and I understand that. But 75-yard touchdowns, 200, 300 yards in 2 weeks or something like that.
Over 300.
So, I think it was 320. So we shouldn't really expect for him to be. We should expect for Noah Brown to be a part of this offense moving forward, even with the loss of Tank Dell. Yes, John Mechie deserves more opportunities. Yes, X Hutchinson deserves more opportunities. But it's essential to look at the players that are already contributing factors, not to rule them out. Because, listen, another thing is for Bobby Sloyd, he cannot get stagnant with play calling. He has to utilize more underneath routes, more mesh concepts. I think that'll help a lot. That'll give John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, even Noah Brown, those opportunities to kind of get some of those, whether it's zone or man, those matchups with some of the linebackers, maybe beating a safety, maybe beating a slot cornerback, maybe finding some of those, I don't know how can I put it, some of those difficult matchups for the opposing defenses and try to exploit that. And so I do look at the underneath routes where you can kind of dump it off to John Mechie to give him some opportunities to pick up some yak yards, which is something we haven't had an opportunity to see to this point. Xavier Hutchinson as well. And again, highlighting that Noah Brown, that's something he's been able to do for Houston at various times throughout the year. I don't want to understate how much pressure it is on Bobby Sloyd to actively help out his quarterback, help out his wide receiving core that's down a big part, a huge impact player from the sidelines. And throughout this week, I think it's important that Stroud, Hutchinson, Brown, Mechie, they're getting on the same page. And I want to reference last week on 3rd and 1, you saw CJ take a shot down to Nico Collins. And where he was initially looking, I believe Nico broke in when CJ wanted him to continue out. The chemistry was off. Throughout this entire season, Stroud and Tank have consistently been on the same page. So moving forward, the next week, this past Sunday, right? Last week against the Jags, you saw the 3rd and 1 shot that didn't fall. That was a connection issue, chemistry issue. This past Sunday, 59 to 52 yards downfield bombs. Getting back on the same page. So I'm looking at the play where CJ Stroud overthrew John Mechie. That would have been a clear touchdown at the first of his young career. Was it John Mechie not continuing, or did he loft the ball too high up instead of throwing a dart? Did he expect him to stop? So I'm looking at this week, Cody. What do we always say about CJ Stroud, which you've highlighted since day one?
He learned from his mistakes.
He learned from his mistakes. He works his tail off to not make the same mistakes again. If that opportunity comes again, I'm looking at how he rebounded with Nico Collins from the previous week to get 2 big yards down, 2 big bombs down the field. Moving forward, how can he bounce back with John Mechie? This will be a collective effort. Bobby Sloyd, schematically, give your guys an opportunity to win. But I definitely want to see more Brevin Jordan. We got to expect more from Noah Brown since you've shown us more. And then you'll get the young dogs involved. And I do think they are young dogs for this Texans offense. And I do think that given the opportunity, they can make some plays for CJ in this offense. The 9th offense in the NFL, by the way. Guess where I'm going? I'm going to go see the Rockets.
Make sure Ime don't get into it with the player.
I'm going to make sure I do that, right? And I'm going to make sure that I'm looking to see where I'm sitting at because I want to see all the action. And the only way I'm able to do that is with Game Time. Something that you shouldn't have to worry about. You shouldn't be stressing when you want to buy a ticket to your next event. No, Game Time got you covered. It's fast. It's easy. Sports events, music events. You want to laugh, want to go to a comedy show, theater events. Game Time has it with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat. Where I'm sitting, where can I see, where I'm at. They also have the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Zone Deals gives you an opportunity to pick the section, and Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Just download the Game Time app on your phone. Maybe you want to go on a desktop, doesn't matter. Create an account, use promo code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, Locked On NFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Do you want to know, guys, before we talk about Will Anderson's statement game, and I think this game I'm about to mention would be one of those moments too, another moment. The home game, New Year's Eve, the Tennessee Titans game. Now, all year, we've heard the back and forth. We've heard the y'all used to be the Oilers. This is the Titans now. And we got the colors. You saw U of H get the colors, and the NFL, the No Fun League, issued a warning. I know you see the Oilers hat, but I want to show you this. Tomorrow's Retro. Go to tomorrowsretro.com. Buy your hoodie, buy your t-shirt, use promo code SouthPark98. Let's fill the stadium December 31st, New Year's Eve, against the Titans. Let them know that these colors belong to Houston. No matter where they thought they were, they're going to be at home here in Houston.
Hey, aren't they wearing the Oilers colors too that day?
Let them know. Let them know that regardless of what they may think, this is Houston. These belong to the city of Houston. So again, go to tomorrowsretro.com and use promo code SouthPark98 for 10% off. Let's rock and roll. Now we're going to move back over to the Houston Texans. Will Anderson statement game this past Sunday. Phenomenal game. Dominant day for a rookie. One of the games, where Cody, we sat in the press box and it was centered around with, this is what they traded up for. And my takeaway from it is, when you trade up for the number 3 overall pick, you are expecting sacks, right? In today's NFL, because it's a passing league and because quarterbacks have more opportunities, like 20 years ago, you're not seeing a quarterback not traditionally, but consistently throw for 40 times a game. You're not seeing 40 and 50 attempts from a quarterback. It's different now. And so for the defenses now, you're going to need somebody that can combat that. And what better way to combat that by having somebody continually get after the quarterback? So when the Texans traded up for the number 3 overall pick, that's what a lot of people were looking to get from Will Anderson with sacks. And I understand there's been a big gap from Will Anderson and not getting sacks, right? But I think what fans are starting to do, what Will have done, and stop me if I'm wrong, they put Will Anderson in a box. And in that box, the only way you can impact the game, contribute to the game, is getting the sacks. And by the way, that's a lot of pressure for a first-year NFL player. Though I do understand that Texas traded up for him. Though I do understand they gave up what a lot of people would consider a lot. But at the end of the year, if Houston is in the playoffs, is it really a lot? Right? So I understand that, but I hate that Will Anderson has been limited to sacks, because throughout the year, though there may have been 0 in the sack numbers, got tackles for loss. A lot of people are looking at how the D tackles aren't necessarily the greatest consistently, but 170 yards last year on the ground compared to under 100 this year, I think is at 97, 98. Will Anderson has impacted that greatly. This was a statement game because everything came together But I think what I'm getting at is with his growing pains of not getting those sack numbers, he has still been able to impact the game defensively. Now I think the Jaguars game was a disappointing. Was it Jaguars or
Yeah, he had to be the Jaguars.
That
was disappointment for everybody.
Yeah, it was a disappointing game. But through 13, 14 weeks, man, we cannot say that Will Anderson has not played some good football for Houston. May have not been all in every week, but he's been impactful in different ways for this team, which again, now you're under 100 yards rushing per game after over 170 last year. That alone deserves praise, in my opinion. And stop putting these young players, don't put Will Anderson in the box. It's the same thing that happened with Jadeveon Clowney, which is why I compared the two. But when you impact the game, it's not going to always show up on the stat sheets. It may not always come in sack numbers, but at the end of the day, players in their locker room, coaching staffs, they know that this was possible because a play that he did here. This was possible because of what Will Anderson was able to do. I'm sorry to take all that time up, Cody, but Will Anderson's statement game was a perfect timing. This was a game for Houston to kind of get closer, clinch, or whatever for the playoffs, and he showed up after a dud the previous week. So he had to prove himself, which he did.
You stole my whole entire notes. However, the reason why I wanted to phrase this as the statement game and not Will Anderson Jr.'s breakout game, I think there's a difference. For example, when I look at CJ Stroud, I think his breakout game could be 1 or 2 games. Week 3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he dominated, especially in the first half. I believe he ended the game with like 290, or that game the following week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he threw for, I want to say, like 315 or somewhere along those lines. That was his breakout game. His statement game was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when he led them guys on that fourth quarter drive, when he had everybody in the city of Houston just on fire, when he started to get in consideration for MVP. That was his statement game. A statement game is like, okay, look, let me say this. The breakout game is, this is my coming out party. The statement game is, this is why I am him. And this is exactly what we saw out of Will Anderson Jr. I would say his breakout game was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he had an opportunity. I believe he finished that game with either 1 or 1.5 sacks. I believe he did have a couple quarterback hits. He had like several pressures in that game, and you saw that game was the perfect example as to the impact. Everything that John just said, that game was the perfect example of why Will Anderson Jr. was the number 3 overall pick for the Houston Texans for a reason. But this game right here against the Denver Broncos, this is that statement game to where he's saying, I am him. And yes, he is.
Will, everybody seeing his stat line. You talk about tackles for loss, you talk about sacks, splitting pressure on the quarterback. Like, Will, he wreaked havoc today. And that's what, so we envisioned when we selected Will, and to see him show up in a big-time game for us, show up really being an impact player for us. That's who Will Anderson is, and he shows it every single day. So it really happy for Will in the game that he's had. He had a big-time game for us, calls the interception. One of the interceptions that Stingley got, he calls the interception. So it's just everybody playing together, right? Everybody making plays, leaning on each other. That's a good defense.
That's from his head coach, D'Amico Ryans, who Alabama connection, right? He knew he Alabama and Houston, and we know why he wanted Will Anderson, right? I definitely think that Bama connection had a lot to do with it, and I can't wait to see D'Amico Ryans after the UT and Bama rematch in the national championship, and UT wins that game. But
I hope Bama win, because look, for you professionally, you better root for Bama, because that means the players are going to be in a better mood, coach is going to be in a better mood. And you're going to get, more for what you want out of these players, You're a reporter, not a fan. You got to,
Right now. But I do look at, he mentioned like the stat sheet and how it's not always the prettiest or whatever the case is. You guys just heard it. But Cody, to close out the last 5 games, which every game right now for Houston we all can consider a must win.
Mm-hmm.
What are you personally looking for, right? Because you're in the building every day. You're seeing Will Anderson. And by the way, he had the coolest outfit. I thought he was a rock star Sunday.
Oh yeah,
The post-game outfit,
saw him in the
right?
hallway.
Yeah, with those pants. But what are you looking from him as a player, right? Because he's a leader. He's an impactful player at locker room, off the field, on the field. To close out this year with what Houston has on the line, what are you particularly looking for from Will Anderson?
Consistency, plain and simple. And I think these last 5 games, starting with the New York Jets, given their quarterback situation, it's not
is Zach
pretty.
Wilson on PTO right now? He ain't coming back.
I mean, I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I really do not blame him. Like, hey, y'all thought these other two was gonna go better than me. But for me, with Will Anderson, man, when I look at players in their rookie season, in their second season, the one thing I always look for is consistency. How can you stay consistent? And that's in every single sports. And look, I'm covering another team here in the city of Houston where I'm looking for that same consistency out of Jabari Smith Jr. and Jalen Green, even though he's in year 3. That's a whole nother top for another day, by the way. But that's how you continue to build and to bring this kind of back to the whole Tank Dell conversation that we had to open up the show, and even CJ Stroud. The one thing I think that is the one thing that has made both of those young men so good, so great is the fact that they have been consistent every single week. Even in the games where they look like rookies, you can still see the consistent play. As for Will Anderson Jr., statement game. This is the first time people are going to look at you and say, okay, how are you going to build off the success that you had over the previous week? And that will be totally fine if Will Anderson Jr. does not get a sack against the New York Jets, whoever the New York Jets throw out there under center. However,
I wouldn't be fine with that. I would not be fine with that.
I only say I would be fine with it because, John, it's the small things that has the biggest impact. Out of everything that Will Anderson Jr. did against the Denver Broncos, my favorite thing was that pass deflection. Because if he does not get that pass deflection, the ball doesn't fall in favor of Darius Stingley Jr. Now you're looking at a situation that could have been a completion that could have got Denver Broncos in the group.
We're really making an opportunity to make it a game at that point.
My point exactly. So it's those little small things that I want to see out of Will Anderson Jr. And at the end of the day, Will Anderson is part of the reason why this team is going to be something special probably by next week. Forget next year. Forget 2025. Next week.
I tweeted, and I'm just looking at Will Anderson right now as a player, young man, and he's still getting acclimated to the NFL game, going up against grown men. But I tweeted, I'm telling y'all now, once Will Anderson adds to that bull rush, he's going to really be a problem.
Once he gets stronger.
I don't think it's strength that's a problem. He's strong right now. But once he gets moved, because he got those 2 sacks Sunday out bull rushes. Once he's able to add to that, and I think that's going to really come in year 3, you're going to see a different Will Anderson. I think this young man is going to be primed for greatness here in Houston. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life. Can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life situations? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics. Right now, they're in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade, guys. This is scary. So if you see me and I ain't just shaking hands, understand why. But I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than not having the antibiotics when my kid gets sick because of the supply chain issue that can keep them from some of the life-saving medication that they need. Thankfully, because of Jase Medical, we can be okay. We can be okay, but we all got to take action, which is why I'm telling you guys. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinuses, skin infections, among others. This stuff can happen to any of us at any time. Visit jasemedical.com. It will get reviewed by an on-board certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use our offer code locked on, of course, to get $20 off your order. Again, go to jasemedical.com and use offer code locked on to get $20 off your first order. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Cody, unsung heroes from Broncos game. Who you got?
My guy, Matt Amendola. Last week, everybody was trying to put the blame on him because he missed, what was that, like a 58, 59 yard?
He missed 2 50s.
Field goal. Well, yeah, he did miss 2 field goals in that game last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But, you know, the biggest one, a lot of people was looking at him missing that potential game time field goal that I felt was kind of unfair to put the blame on him, only because, in my opinion, he should not have been in that position to attempt a 58, 59-yard field goal, by the way. However, when you take a look at this final score, 22-17, Houston Texans, of course, with 22. Amendola went 3 for 3 on his field goals. That's 9 points. Take away those 9 points, the Houston Texans only scored 13 points, and they would have lost this game. Yeah. So shout out to Matt Amendola. Don't know if this is going to be his final game. I'm hoping he has at least one more game in him, because following Sunday's game, I had an opportunity to talk to him at his locker. He did say his family and stuff will be in attendance because he's from that whole New Jersey, New York area. So it's like, okay, Texans, just give the young man at least one more game before the true kicker, Kami Fairbairn, come back. But once again, man, shout out to Matt Amendola.
My unsung hero from Sunday's game, Desmond King.
Welcome back.
And Desmond King last Sunday played in one snap, a big one snap, stop. But he hadn't played in
Shaq Griffin.
yeah. But he hadn't played a regular season snap all year.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at his impact this Sunday, I said, man, you know, why was he, like Tavia Thomas ain't getting no burn? Why was he cut in the first place? Remember how shocked we was? We kind of was like, you know, Desmond King or Tavia Thomas. We thought that last preseason game he played great. But Desmond King was an unsung hero, man. I can give you the numbers, but I don't think that's necessary. I do think that what Desmond King provides for Houston is, if he's in the area, a lot of guys not necessarily getting a lot of those big yak yards on Desmond King. But I also think he just fits better in terms of being able to be a playmaker at that nickel position. You saw Houston interchange on defense a lot, but he was phenomenal for Houston, and I think we can highlight Will Anderson's monster game. Of course, Derek Stingley wasn't a unsung hero. We sung a lot for Derek Stingley, right? But I think the unsung hero for the defense was definitely, undoubtedly, Desmond King. And on offensive side of the ball, after last week's performance, I'm giving Laremy Tunsil love. I'm giving Laremy Tunsil love. He didn't allow a sack. I think he allowed one pressure. The rest of the offensive line wasn't the best, but I thought Laremy Tunsil bounced back in a good way, a big way for Houston. Thank you for listening, watching this Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. And make sure you guys go get your hoodies. Tomorrowsretro.com, promo code SouthPark98.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.